All right, so I need to figure out which banquet had the least number of ants being served to the most number of ants being served. And the way that we do this is that we have to take the number of grams of sugar and divide it by the serving size for each banquet. So we're going to start with banquet A. And banquet A, we start with 1,201 divided by 0.31 or 31 hundredths. We can't divide with a decimal in my divisor, so we're going to need to make that a whole number. So we can think of it two ways. One is that we can move the decimal to the right 2 spots, which is what we would do here as well. Another way is thinking about when you move the decimal to the right 2 spots, what you've done is you've multiplied it by 100. So if we do that, this becomes 31, and then this becomes 120,100. And then we're going to divide. And 31 goes into 123 times, and that's going to be 93. Subtract. And I have 27, and bring down the 1. 31 goes into 271 8 times. That's 248. Subtracting, I have 23. 31 would go into 237 times. That's going to be 217. Subtract, I have 13, and then I'm going to bring down that 0. And then it goes into, or 31 goes into 134 times, and that's going to be 124. I've got 6 left over. There's nothing left to bring down, so I'm going to add a decimal and a 0 to keep going. 31 goes into 60 just that one time. 31, subtract, I have 29, and then it would go into 29 9 times, and that would be 279. And I'm going to stop right there. So for banquet A, that is the number of ants that would be served. So let's go to banquet B, and we'll go over here. So banquet B, we have 12,002 divided by 3.1. And again, we want to move those decimals over. So we can't have a decimal in our divisor. So if we move it over 1 spot to the right, here and here, you can also think of it as multiplying both numbers by 10. This would become 31, and this is 120,020. And then let's go ahead and start dividing. And we have very similar numbers to the previous one. Same divisor. So 31 doesn't go into 1 or 12, but it goes into 123 times. 3 times 31 is 93. Subtract, I'm going to get 27 and bring down that 0. 31 would go into 278 times, and that's going to be 248. Subtract, and I'm going to have 22 and bring down the next 2. And that'll go into that 7 times. We have 217. Subtract, I have a 5, and bring down the 0. And 31 would go into 51 time. 31, and we would have 29. I'm going to add a decimal and a 0 to keep going. And that's going to go into that. Did I subtract correctly? I think this is actually 19. Sorry, I forgot to borrow properly over there. And that'll go into that. I'm going to go with 6 times with 186. Subtract, I have a 4. And then that'll go into that 1 time. And that is where I will stop. So for banquet B, that is the number. We're going to move on to banquet C at this point. So we've got banquet C. Let's see if I have enough room. Banquet C's number is 120.2 divided by 31 thousandths. So we're going to want to move that decimal over 3 times to the right, which would be the same thing as multiplying by 1,000. This becomes 120,200 divided by 31. $31 will go into 123 times. 31 times 3 is 93. Subtract, I have 27, bringing down that 2. 31 would go into 272 8 times, and that'll be 248. subtract, and I'll have 24 and bring down the 0. 31 will go into 240. It's got to be 7 times, and that'll be 217. Subtract, I have 23 and bring down the next 0. And then 31 would go into 230 again 7 times. I'll have 13. I'm going to add a decimal with a 0 to bring down. 31 would go into 134 times. That's 124 with a 6 left over. And then 31 would go into 61 time. And that is where I'm going to stop for banquet C. I've got one more, which is going to be banquet D. Let's see. And I have 120,007 divided by 31. And that one is already as is, so I don't need to convert anything. And I can just start dividing. And that's going to go into that 3 times. 93, subtract. It's the same first step every time. And then into 270 is going to be 8 times. 248, and then into 220, that's going to go 7 times, 217, for 3, we're bringing down the 7, that'll go into 37 one time, with a 6 left over, adding a decimal and a 0, that'll go into 60 one time, we'll have 29 left over, and then that'll go into that 9 times, and that's where I'm going to stop there. So we have all 3 numbers. Let me see if I can zoom out. And we need to put these in order from least to greatest. So starting with the number that is the least, that goes to banquet D over here. And then the next one would be B right there. And then it would go to, I think it's A, yeah. And then C is going to be the greatest. So that's those in order from least to greatest.